Welcome to Red Tiger Chronicles. This is Sifu Paul Mason, owner of Red Tiger Martial Arts in Cincinnati, Ohio, and this podcast is to help some of the most extraordinary martial artists that walk among us tell us their stories. I'm glad to welcome Master Brad Ryan of Katy, Texas, Ming's Martial Arts of Katy, with us this evening. We just got back from an epic trip to China and the Southern Shaolin Temple. And we want to just reflect on some of these things and talk about whatever he wants to talk about. Usually I give a rundown of like the martial artist resume, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to hit a couple of key bullets. You're a master in the Shaolin Wing Chun organization under Grandmaster Benny Ming, 6th degree. You're also a 7th degree in the VTAA Wing Chun Athletic Association, which is the association founded by the Yip Man School. As we were talking a little bit before off mic, off camera, you've got a ton of hardware to show for your efforts, and rightly so. You're one of the hardest working men in the Wing Chun business, I believe, as on the business side, the physical side. He came to China, he came to the Shaolin Temple, ripped as can be, like he was getting ready to fight in the UFC. And, that's our first hall. So big props to that. That's our first hall of Shaolin. And so, the fundamentals, you remember the fundamentals, they'll take care of you. I'm sure you know.
Yes, sir.
One thing I did want to address today, I guess it was all over the news that Sifu Li Hui Sung had passed away. That was the first Wing Chun Sifu of your Sifu, Grandmaster
Yes,
Benny Ming. I was wondering, did you meet him? Had you met him before?
I did not. I think Master Roadruck, my Sihing, some of the early trips that he did with Sifu to Hong Kong, probably, back in maybe the early 90s. And Sihing Roadruck started, I think, 3 years ahead of me. And I was a long-distance student. A lot of my Sihings, obviously, were in the Ohio, Dayton, Ohio branch headquarters. And I was a long-distance student from Rochester, New York. So, number one, I was a few years behind. So they were my Sihing, and I was kind of, just starting to kind of prove myself as a student. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times those early trips in the early 90s, I was kind of still a peon, I think, and then a long-distance student. So unfortunately, I did not. Of course, I've heard, Sifu Ming, Grandmaster Ming, make reference to him and stuff like that. But no, unfortunately, okay. I didn't meet him directly.
Yeah, it's a shame, I'm sure. Grandmaster Ming is feeling emotions today. I mean, when you think about, the butterfly effect, I mean, without that gentleman, none of us would be sitting at this table today doing what we're doing, talking about what we're talking about. So much respect.
Well, and he was the Sifu that told Sifu to, Sifu always tells the story where he's like, oh, you're going back to the U.S., go to Grandmaster Moyat. Mm-hmm. And, this is back before the internet, right? Yeah. This is back in this is actually in the 80s. Yeah. And he didn't really realize how big the U.S. was. He said, just 5 Moyat. Well, again, you go back to the 80s, there's no internet, there's no Google. How do you find them? Well, back in the day, we used Yellow Pages. Yeah. Well, every city's got a Yellow Page, right?
Yellow Pages. Yeah.
Yeah. So it took Sifu actually several months to kind of find out where he was. And then, the blessing was he was in New York. Sifu was in Ohio. It was only maybe a 6 to 8 hour drive. So it was actually pretty possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Usually in the past, we just wrapped up our first season before the China trip. And starting out, I used to have some pre-planned questions because the whole point of this podcast was to get to know the martial artist behind the belt or the rank and kind of humanize that person to make them, relatable to everybody, to the general public. Sure. And later on, last season, we kind of got more of a conversational style. So, I don't have a script for you. I know there's some things I could ask, but I know you kind of approached me on the bus on the train, I believe, going from somewhere to somewhere in China. And so I was really flattered that you'd heard of the podcast, maybe listened to it. So, do you have something pressing? What's on your mind?
No, not really. I guess I just, being a disciple under Grandmaster Ming and being with the organization, going on almost 30 years.
Wow.
I don't count anymore at all.
Yeah.
But I guess my message would be just, what we teach and our methods in the sense of, understanding that, Kung Fu itself is a vehicle for self-improvement, self-mastery, self-discovery. I run a full-time school here. I've been doing Shaolin Wing Chun full-time since 2008. Before that, I had a club. I, had the regular corporate job, and, you work your 9 to 5, and then from 6 to 9, 6 to 10, you run your part-time school. So I did that for years, and just had an opportunity to go full-time in 2008, and then, the rest is history. But a lot of times, we get new clients and new people coming in all the time, and new leads through website and stuff. What is the difference, right? I'm in Katy, Texas. There's a lot of competitors. We have about 35 schools here in Katy. And Katy's like, I say a small city, but it's a suburb, 25 miles west of Houston, Texas. So I haven't run the figures in years, but I mean, like 15 years ago, Houston had, I think, over 300 schools. And this was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And, just Katy has about 35 schools. And I'm one of them. So my point is, I have a lot of competition. I mean, in 5 square miles, we might have 15 schools, 20 schools at least. So it's very, very competitive here. But my point is, when people come in, that's obviously people ask, what is the difference, or what makes Kung Fu different, or, that type of thing. And I always like to pre-qualify my students. What our theme here is quality over quantity. I would rather make a little less and know that I'm providing a higher level service, higher level education, and truly helping, serving, and guiding others, rather than, I got overhead, I have bills, I have retirement, I have healthcare, bills like everybody else.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I try to put the long-term vision of self-improvement, self-discovery, and really helping and guiding people. I built a new school here. This is like my 3rd location. It's my only location, but I mean, just over the last 20 years, we've moved.
The evolution.
And I was blessed enough to have an opportunity to come to Cinco Ranch, Texas, which is kind of an area within Katy, but it's a higher end, upper middle class, very nice neighborhoods, and very affluent, very educated people. And so when we opened up our school here, I'm kind of, putting high level service, high level of education, because a lot of our clientele around here have their masters, their PhDs. We have engineers here. We have IT professionals. We have business owners here. We have accountants, lawyers. One of my parents is a data scientist. I had to look that up to figure out what that was. Right. So, but my point is, it works for this area because I'm all about, number one, self-improvement, but all about high-level education. I think hopefully my Sihings agree with this, but I think, all the masters in Shaolin Wing Chun, we're all masters in our own right, but we also, each master kind of might be better or have more of a specialty in this area or this area or this area, right? And because we can't all be high level masters in everything, right? We kind of have, maybe some people are more technical or more, are more deeper into the philosophy, or some people are deeper into the Qigong, or some people are more into, developing the high level fighters and that type of thing, right? So we all have the base of knowledge, but just like any institute, education, organization, there's some people that gravitate towards here, some people gravitate towards here. And I think one of the things that I stand out with is I'm very, 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 very technical. As you know, Paul, as a disciple in Shaolin Wing Chun, we have the formula. and the Sat Ming Dim, the 10 bite points. It's kind of a high level code for understanding 3-dimensional space and how to maximize efficiency and apply it to fighting, right? And I don't know, I kind of get that, like from a technical standpoint. I can be across the room, and if someone's elbow's out 1/8 of an inch and they're 30 feet away, like I see it.
Yeah.
I'm very, very technical in that sense. And so I think that, and I say this humbly, but it comes across with my students as well, where, the body mechanics and stuff like that's expressed pretty well. My background before martial art, and I'll say this briefly, but I was kind of in the health and fitness field. So I'm 4th generation entrepreneur. Myself, my dad, my grandfather, and my great grandfather, and then before that, I don't know. But I'm 4th generation entrepreneur, and it's funny actually. Sifu had me do a paper years ago. Actually, I remember I was 33, so I'm 51. I'll be 52 later this year. So it was a while ago, but we did a paper, and it was basically kind of like, it was like more of a Hall 1 reflection. Why do you think the way you do? Right? Spiritually, mentally, physically, financially, right? Why is your mindset that way? And one thing I realized throughout that paper, it was interesting. When I came across Kung Fu in general, I knew, and I tell, people coming in, because I want them to know I'm genuine and real. My first week of training Kung Fu, I immediately had an internal connection with it. I knew within my 3rd to 5th day, it was my first week, I wanted to do this the rest of my life. It was that body, mind, heart, mind connection. Yeah. It wasn't like my plan B is a career, or if I lost my corporate job, I have this to background. No. And I was in college at the time studying health, fitness, physiology, kinesiology. Like I was either going to go to physical therapy, occupational therapy, sports and conditioning coach, cardiac rehab. I was something in the sports conditioning, rehab, medical type of field. And once I got the hook of Kung Fu, it checked all my boxes. And I'll wrap up saying this. My mom was a teacher, a guide, or a mentor. My dad was very physical labor, liked to get sweaty, liked to use his hands, all that. And he was an entrepreneur. So it wasn't until I was like 33, I reflected on that. And I was just like, wow. So I got the teaching from my mom, but I got the entrepreneur and the physical aspect from my dad. And then it kind of came together. And I've always been interested in philosophy and self-improvement. It's just ever since a kid, I always was very interested in that. So I guess, I kind of gave you a big answer, but for me, it's really making sure we guide the students, because I'll just conclude with this. I tell people and my students, do we fight every day? And it's kind of a loaded question, right? And they're like, we don't fight every day. And I was like, well, physically. Physically, correct. So I was like, look, we're not in Katy, Texas, Cinco Ranch, Cincinnati, Ohio, wherever you guys live. We're not in the streets, hopefully, doing physical fights every day, every year, every quarter, whatever. But mentally, in our mind and in our heart, we're constantly struggling. We're constantly fighting each other. Mm-hmm. What are my thoughts? Are they good thoughts? Are they bad thoughts? Do I believe in myself? Mm-hmm. What limitations mentally, financially, spiritually do I put on myself? Right. And so I don't care if you're making $1 million a year, you're making $10,000 a year. We all struggle. We all have, certain attachments and things that we struggle with. And really what separates the person that's really successful and not successful is, how we overcome all those pitfalls. Because if you're successful, sometimes I reference Vincent Ming, right? Our best competitor, our top competitor, Grandmaster Ming's son, right? He's a true prodigy of the system. And everybody sees, okay, world title and Sanda and Wing Chun and this and this. But how many times has he lost, right? I've been to tournaments where Vincent has lost. Yeah. So, so the people at the top lost so much, but they just kept going, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess that's just kind of one of my messages. Just keep fighting. in all aspects of your life, and with focus and intent, and surrounding yourself with a good team, and you have a good vehicle, like, sky's the limit.
Yeah, it just goes back to the old saying, a black belt is just a white belt that didn't quit, right? I mean, you gotta, I routinely tell my students that get frustrated over learning the material, like, you gotta suck at stuff first before you get good at stuff. And I just wanted to address, I think we're both giving testimonials to each other and thereby the general public that, I'm in it for the self-improvement. I mean, I actually, when COVID happened and I had other things going on, like I tried to take a step back from the organization for a little bit and, not be as active and maybe just not be present. But I tell you,
let you.
Yeah. Well, my students wouldn't let me, number one. And, when I first walked in Master Lambert's door about 16 years ago and had my first class, like the martial arts was really the only thing that made sense to me, and I'm not saying it's the only thing that makes sense, period. But to me, that's the only thing that makes sense, like framing everything into this art specifically helps me be better, helps me live a better life, have better relationships, and communicate better. And, when it's just something I can't not do it. Right. It's, in my life, well, when we talk about our art, we talk about Chan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and a big part of that's detachment, right? Yeah. And in Buddhism, you're kind of taught that, desire leads to attachment that leads to suffering. So I can honestly say I don't desire this at all. I am compelled. I'm compelled to do it. Becky's probably going to hit me with her shoe after we get off this call. But when I asked her to marry me, I was, young, prime of my life, and I didn't want to get married. I wasn't in love with the idea of getting married. I just knew I loved her. So I was compelled to get married. Right. Yeah. You saw me hobbling around China. I didn't want to go to China. I didn't want to hobble around China, but I was compelled to go. Right. So you have to. There's what's the saying? It's the chi follows the yi, right? The concept, the idea, follows the energy, and this energy makes sense to me, like what we're doing in this organization, the self-improvement through martial arts. So that's I'm just here to second your motion for sure.
Absolutely, because the thing is, and and I know, it's, if you're stuck on the surface level, we have the six wisdoms, right? And so the Sik and the Yin are kind of the first two, and if people get stuck there, again, if they're just there for fitness or just there for self-defense, and they want to clock in and clock out and train for a year and move on, again, that's fine, right? That's going to be 80% of people, 90% of people out there. But in other words, if it's surface level, it doesn't get in your heart, doesn't get in your mind. It's very superficial.
Yeah, it's just a hobby.
But once you connect with the mind, you connect with the spirit, you connect with the emotion. I agree, Paul. It compels us, and it becomes our lifestyle, our methodology, really our philosophy of life, and how we want to live it, and how we, even being a Sifu now is like, how I break things down, how I problem solve, how I figure out methodology on how to get from point A to point B, and how, like you said, communicate. How do I communicate? How do I get into someone's heart? How do I get into someone's mind?
Exactly.
How do I really change their life? How do I show the love and compassion from Chan and Zen and Shaolin itself, right? Sifu Ming says, if you took all of Shaolin and kind of summarized it into, 2 words, you'd have reality and compassion. So I always remember that. So, if I'm struggling with something or whatever, it's like, boom, let's just focus on what's real, try not to live under illusion. And then also, how can I show, as much compassion to people as I can.
Yeah. And this may be related to, I was thinking of this question earlier, but it may be related to this compulsion to do this that you're talking about. And Master Ryan, you mentioned and I didn't know this, but I'm just hearing this story myself. But you mentioned when Grandmaster Ming came here and Li Hui Sung was like, find Moyat, right? And you said, oh, it was only a 6 to 8 hour, trip. And you yourself are talking about being a long distance student, New York, Texas, that's a long way from Dayton. And, I'm just interested in what that looks like as a student of someone who's states away, when we have students who are like, oh, I can't get across town.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
believe me, I know.
I've heard Willie Nelson talk about like traveling on the road, and he's like a 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo, and he talks about like Zoom calls on the bus and stuff. But like, what did that look like for you? What kind of advice do you have?
I'm glad
for
you asked
artists?
that. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Becky, because that's when I kind of motivate or coach or guide my students. Either it could be, a new prospect where I'm interviewing them, seeing if, we're a good fit for them, all the way to, working with one of my black sashes or brown sashes that's, 6 months or a year away from his black sash, and he's, frustrated so I kind of expand on that a little bit, because there's a couple ways I can answer that. Number one, my level of commitment and my passion was already there, right? Obviously. And when I first started, I was self-employed when I met Sifu. I had my own personal training business. Mm-hmm. So I was self-employed, but I was a young kid in my 20s, right? So, I was struggling like we all do, right? I was working all the time and this and this and this. But what I did was, just to give you some logistics, it varied, but anywhere between 6 weeks and 9, 12 weeks, just kind of depends. But I would just take 4 days off. And I lived in Rochester, New York. He was in Dayton, Ohio, obviously, still is. And it was it's funny because I had a 91 Firebird at the time, and the drive was 7 hours and 13 minutes. I still remember it.
Wow.
Plus or minus about 6 minutes, depending on traffic, if I had to stop and go to the bathroom, whatever. But I had it down. I made so many trips. I knew within
you would go, you say you would take 4 days off. So would you just go and just like, as much as you could physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, soak up for those 4 days, and then just take that amount home and like just
correct.
Just run it through over and over and over.
Yeah. So with Sifu's permission, because before I was with Sifu Ming, I had another Sifu in Wing Chun that I trained under for 4 years before finding Sifu Ming.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I already had, let's say, 4 years in the system, and it was a little more superficial. I'm glad I had that first teacher, because he kind of gave me the, Faokyu, Sankyu type of level. And then, Sifu Ming was able to bring me to a deeper level of consciousness.
He brought out that technician, right?
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm blessed for that first experience. But yeah, that's exactly what I would do, Becky. I would drive there, take 4 days off from work. I had a notebook, and I know your Sifu, Master Lambert, he's big into notebooks, right? I've had many conversations with him. His first, when he did that tour around his school and all that, he's like, okay, you guys get a notebook, right? That's
and he will give you a notebook if you don't have your.
We've got like 3.
If you can't afford a notebook will be provided for you. Yes,
and that's one of the. So I was able to accomplish it really 3 ways. Number one. And I even went through all my notebooks at one point and just kind of did an average. I averaged 16. I think I came up with about 16 pages of notes every trip when I went to Master Ming.
Wow.
So when everybody would go back home, like we do it, people would go home, people would go back, watch TV, whatever, go to sleep. I would debrief and literally go through the whole day in my mind. Mm-hmm. And if I had in between classes or we had lunchtime, depending on the training methodology, if it was a seminar type of format where I was just, going to classes for those 4 days. I would just take notes throughout the day, and then I would do definitely a debriefing at night. So 16 pages of notes every trip on average. My most was 27 pages. That was my most.
Oh my gosh.
And then I think my least was like 8.
You know what is really like hitting me right now is just, it's kind of like we were talking about, like the teenagers at the mall, and, they see this melting pot mix of people all the time and they take it for granted. Yeah. Right. It's the same thing. We have this the accessibility of Master Ming being 2 hours away, or Sifu Paul for his students being, 20-minute drive away. Yep. It makes us take it for granted. And I hate to admit it, but when I was medically cleared to train, right, there were a lot of nights, like I would go 4 nights a week sometimes, but there were nights that I talked myself out of it, like, I just don't feel like it, and it's kind of like, man, I want to swat myself for those nights I didn't go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like for someone like you who's like, no, I am determined to, however I have to get it done, just soaking up every second of that.
Yeah. And so it was the notes. And then the second thing is my first X amount of years when I really needed some video. Now, Sifu didn't allow it for most people, but, once I became a disciple, or, Sifu knew I was in this, even before I became an official disciple, tea ceremony and all that, Sifu saw my commitment. He saw my etiquettes, that type of thing. And back in the day, he allowed me to videotape some of it. So then that was a second source where I could go study the videos, decompress all the videos, or translate all the videos, like that type of thing. And then the third tier to that success model, being a long distance student, was because I had 4 years with my previous Sifu, and then I was starting with Sifu Ming, he allowed me to have a small little club. So I wasn't like a Sifu status, but I would be like a Sihing, let's just say. Okay. So he allowed, because really, and I tell people this, here's the summary. You need to be a long distance student and actually make it work. You need 3 things. You need money, you need time, and you need a training partner. Now, obviously, you need focus, determination, passion, the mental side. But just practically speaking, if you don't have the money, it's not your time and place. If you don't have the time, it's not your time and place. And if let's say you can make all the trips, you have the money, you have the time, but you don't have any training partners at all. So it's a 3-prong approach. If you're missing one of those 3, I'm not saying you can't be successful, but it's going to be a lot slower process.
I mean, the wooden dummy is going to get you so far, right?
Correct. Yeah, you'll be great at the wooden dummy.
You'll be good at the wooden dummy,
but it's going to be no good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
I just want to, before we get too late, I know you're busy and you can tell us, when you got to go whenever, but a little bit more about your impressions from the China trip, your feelings about visiting the temple for the first time, or interacting with maybe martial artists or other Sifus that you hadn't experienced, or even just seeing, I know you brought a gang of students up there, watching them experience China through their eyes. I mean, what was that like for you, and what were some key takeaways?
Well, this is my 3rd official trip to China, 2nd competitive. There was a world championship in 2018 that I went to. So a couple of things. Number one, obviously when Sifu told us about this opportunity of the Shaolin Temple, that's, I remember, I believe Sifu did an article. I want to say Sifu did an article, or maybe it was another article, but Kung Fu Magazine talking about, back in 93, where they kind of officially found, okay, we believe this is the resting place of the Southern Shaolin Temple, right? Over the years, there's been, different scientists that thought it was this place, this place, this place. But then, finally, based on certain artifacts and certain carvings and enough conclusions, the government and our archaeologists and all that, officially said, no, this was the resting place, right? So it wasn't like just everybody agreed all at once, right? It was a process. But I remember even back then just seeing like I think it was an article in Kung Fu magazine, and that was back in 93. I think I read that article, 94, somewhere around there. And here I was, I graduated high school in 92. So here I am, a 19-year-old boy, reading about that in Kung Fu magazine in New York. And then here we are, I don't know, 30 years later. Wow. And, not only has it been rebuilt, but then expanded. And, they finished the actual temple, I believe, in April of this year. And then the sports association and Wing Chun organizations and the government said, hey, originally they thought, because originally I think they were going to try to finish the temple a few months before. And then I think it ran a little over and they finished in April. And at first they were like, oh, it's too late in the year, we'll do it next year. And then whoever made that decision, they're like, no, we're doing it this year. Like, get it done. Mm-hmm. And so Sifu got the call and, Paul, it was kind of like, was not on our list. like I literally have my desk business planner right here. It's all filled out for the whole year. This trip was not on it, right? Yeah. We got the call. It was very spontaneous. We only had a few months to prepare. Mm-hmm. So it was like, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, of course, it's been a dream of mine. We're Wing Chun and, we're more into the Southern Shaolin roots, a little more Southern influence than Northern, of course, we love both. And it was great. I mean, very professional building. And then to host the first tournament there, I mean, it's a blessing, right? I mean, as a Sifu, as a Shaolin Wing Chun guy, and one thing, okay, I'll pivot a little. The relationships, everybody dogs China, right? They're evil, there's this and that. And they're probably not perfect. We're probably not perfect, right? I'm not perfect, right? But my impression over there was they really want to build a good relationship, with China. And it seems genuine. Yeah. I mean, some people might just say, well, there's alternative motive, I don't know. But my point is, I know, like, when we had that dinner, the U.S. team, this was a pretty big thing. And I believe you were there too, right? We had that dinner with the government officials.
I had to hang back because my hip was like trashed after running around on tournament day. But my students were there.
We did a lot of walking. Yeah, I hats off to you, Paul, because I mean I know you're still recovering from that surgery. So like my feet started aching at the end of the trip, and I didn't have surgery. So hats off to you. But no, we had that special VIP dinner for the U.S. team, and I was at the VIP table. I say that humbly, but 2 seats down. So I had a government official on my right, I had a translator on my left, and then 2 other government officials over to my right. Wow. And one of the guys, he is the Chinese American ambassador for all of China to build relationships with the Chinese government and the U.S. government. And I met him. I mean, Great guy, great conversationist, great. I mean, you can just tell he's a genuine guy. And, his whole job is to just build the relationships between it. And then just even like we talked about before we started recording, when we went to the mall, people were excited to interact with us and take pictures of us. And it just seemed real genuine. It wasn't like,
ultimately,
Bill Americans let it take pictures with him. It was not like that at all.
And I think at the end of the day, like the humans, the people are so much more than the politics and the government. And I think it's time that like the whole world remembers that,
No, you're exactly right. And it's funny. I got back. So I have a student, I have a parent of one of my kids' students. He lived in China 9 years. Now he lives here in Katy, Texas, regular Caucasian guy, whatever you want to tell him. and he lived there for 9 years for business. And it's funny you say that, Becky, because that's exactly what he said. He said, look, politics aside, that's a different conversation, but politics aside, the people of China are really good, caring, loving, giving, family-based people. Yeah. And he lived there for 9 years. So, if that was his impression over a 9-year period, he knows a lot more than I do because I never lived there for 9 years.
Absolutely. But I have to believe you could even take China out of that sentence and just say the people of that country. You know what I'm saying? Like wherever it is, if we stop letting ourselves be influenced by these talking heads,
Yeah, you're exactly right too. And, we teach that in Kung Fu too, where everything's all like this style, me, you, my lineage, your Sifu, my country, your country, da 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 da. I bow this way, you bow this way. I wear this uniform, you wear this uniform. So on the superficial level, we're all segregated, right? It's me versus you, and black versus white, and Hispanic versus whatever. It's all very, very superficial. But as we go down, and I know exactly what you mean, Becky, because as we go deeper, we're so much more alike than separate. We all want to have, love in our life. We all want to have good relationships in our life. We all want to, have security in our life. We all want to take care and give to other people. And
even those differences,
those
differences are fascinating. They're not threatening. They're fascinating.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And same with the martial arts. The differences are fascinating. It's not something to like, oh, mine's better than yours. Like it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like the differences are the seasonings of the soup that is your life, I think.
Yeah. Do you want to eat just that bland chicken, or do you want to eat some seasoned chicken?
The 18 herbs and spices. Yeah, for sure. So I got to ask, living in Southeast Texas, did that just prepare you for the heat in China, the heat and mugginess? Like, was it nothing to you, or did you feel it like us northern?
Okay, so I'm going to answer 2 questions. Number one, actually, is funny. I lived in Rochester, New York, for 27 years, so I got to a point of up here of like, I'm sick of the snow, sleet, rain. At the time, years ago, Rochester in the Farmer's Almanac back in the day, I'm aging myself before Google, but the Farmer's Almanac rated Rochester at one point the second most overcast city in the U.S. I think Seattle was number 1, Rochester was number 2. Of course, that was just 1 year. I'm sure it changes. But I got up to like, you know what? I'm moving south. I'm not going to live there till 65 and then move to Florida like most New Yorkers. Yeah. So I came down here and I actually enjoy the heat. Some people are more colder people, some are hotter. I actually love the heat. And then the other way I'll answer that real quick, Paul. My last number one, I have a high tolerance of the heat, but my last probably 10 days, maybe even 2-3 weeks. I don't remember the time, but I did at least one workout a day outside, and we were 95, 100 degrees. And I was doing sprints. So I would sprint my whole plaza, and then I would walk, like a quarter. Then I would do my form, either Suna Tao Chum Kyu, Bill G. I would walk inside, do the wooden dummy, or I did the knife.
All right.
And then I would walk, and then I would sprint again. Oh. And I did that for about an hour and a half every day. So not only,
that puts a whole new meaning to trial by fire. Like you took that literally and ran with it.
Yeah, and that literally, and I didn't do it in the morning. I didn't do it after sunset. I literally did it anywhere between 11 and probably 1 or 2 in the afternoon. I mean, I did it, north sun, but and part of that, it comes down to that saying, get comfortable from being uncomfortable. Right. Or I believe it's the Marines, embrace the suck. Right. It's like, you know what? We're martial artists, we're fighters, and you got to go through the bad times, and then so when times get bad, it's like, you know what? You problem solve, you figure it out. So.
Alex, what do you got? I know you just met Master Ryan this summer, and for one of our first video episodes. You probably should say something. So
I've just been sitting here. Yeah. I can just be the weird guy just sitting here.
And the omniscient chorus has been talking the whole time. I apologize.
I did want to ask. So, I saw your Bacham Dao form, and it was very impressive. And I've learned a little bit of the knife form, and I want to learn more of it, and not just the form, but actually become more skilled with them. So I was just wondering, is there any like piece of advice you'd have specifically to the knives, to someone new to learning them?
I mean, just basic stuff, just know the mechanics, just like when we go through the halls, number one, let's say I'll just use the halls as an example, basic exercise, wheeling those knives for 7-8 minutes at a time, especially if they're metal ones, it takes conditioning, right? Ligaments, tendons, muscles, endurance, your heart rate, right? So first hall is, let's say, minus the mental stuff, but on the physical platform, you just, make sure you're conditioned, right? And the more you do that form, the more condition you'll get. And then sometimes I'll tell people, sometimes go for speed, sometimes go for power, sometimes go for agility and footwork, right? Sometimes go for like a quick application type of thing. I guess that's more the speed, but with intent or focus on the application, right? So there's different layers there. And then going into the second hall for basic movements, shapes, would just know the details of the mechanics, go back to the formula, go back to gate theory, go back to, Imsham, Yansham and distance awareness, all those things we talk about for basics, know them, right? Because if I do something and my elbow's out, that structure power, that how the energy is going to be created and whipped through that knife, so to speak, the body mechanics is one of the major components, right? There's different ways we generate power. Body mechanics, sometimes we call that structure power, right? The body mechanics is super good. And then the next layer would be the yi, which would be the concept or idea. And then what that would be is when you train it, Alex, it would be like, so if you're training the application, understand the concept behind the application. And Sifu Ming actually has the Bak Cham Do book, and he breaks down in the book the concept as well as the technique itself, as well as the skill set itself. So really the yi would be the understanding part of really what are you doing, right? Yes, you're doing a form. Yes, you're doing a weapon thing, but what are you really doing at the essence, right, of the skill set development, the concept, and the application itself? And yeah, I would just say, but just be patient. I've been training the Do for a while. Even Sifu, of course, I love Sifu. He's my Kung Fu father. And, he was real proud of me for that I got the Do, because he said, wow, I'm glad you got the gold medal in the Do. I know that's kind of one of your babies, and, you put a lot of time into that. So I put a lot of time on and off over the years with the Do. So obviously, be patient, don't be too hard on yourself, but definitely don't be too soft on yourself either.
And I think it also goes back to what you said earlier about the notes, right? So if you intend to get good at the mechanics and understand the concepts, you can't expect to just mimic, you can't mimic everything, And the art, we say there's a time and place for everything, but when you're learning, you have to take everything that's available to you. So like Master Ryan said, if you can get the book. I've got the videotapes. You can watch the videotapes, practice, and then whatever I show you, whatever I say, like when we're like, I might talk a lot of garbage, like when we're outside of class, but when we're in class, I can assure you everything I say, you need to be paying attention to. And if you can't remember it all, like you and everybody else, you gotta write stuff down. Like Master Ryan was talking about, our Sifu, Becky and I, we got these like huge, thick notebooks because you got to write stuff down so you can look at it later and reflect on it and find out what it means to you. Yeah. And that
we
really
have
goes for
entire
everything.
bookshelves upstairs that are just
it's
notebooks.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I'm really proud of you guys that you did that. And I know, like we said earlier, you know, your Sifu Master Lambert, he's pretty strict on that, and you know, blessings to him for that, because you know, then, you know, he produces great students like you guys, and really, you know, at the end of the day, us as Sifus and masters and disciples of the system, you know, it's a big responsibility. You know, I even still look at, you know, even with my rank and my accomplishment and my time in, if I really, really reflect, I'm still nowhere near done. Being a disciple under Grandmaster Ming, he has set the bar so high. And the thing is, he constantly evolves and grows himself. So because he's growing and pushing himself and evolving and going deeper and doing more for the system, right? I mean, I can't say anything, but me and Sifu and a couple other masters had a private meeting, and there's just like, you know, there's just so many. We're visionaries, you know, or Sifu Ming is the real visionary. And there's just, you know, we want to grow this art and grow this organization to be, you know, really, you know, the biggest Wing Chun organization on the planet, and also have the best reputation. And if you have that mindset, you have that vision, that's the end point. It's like Stephen Covey, right? 7 Habits of Most Successful People. Start with the end in mind. What is your long-term goal? Where do you want this organization 20, 40, 50 years from now? Okay, this is my long-term goal. Okay, then kind of reverse engineer, right? Like with goal setting, how do I get there? What do I got to do the next 5 years? What do I got to next do this year? What do I got to do next quarter? What do I got to do this week? Right. And you just kind of go back, and we have that type of leader. And even though I'm, you know, a little higher in the organization, it's sometimes overwhelming, but that's why I'm still here, because it's like, I know it will make me a better person, a better martial artist, a better Sifu, a better father. It will improve me on every level.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys, anything else? Any last minute questions or thoughts?
Just a lot of gratitude from my corner off the screen over here. Just over the years, you know, not being able to be actively training due to my medical stuff, you know, it really drives home how much I miss being around the Kung Fu family and being able to be on the floor with such talented martial artists. And I definitely know, Master Ryan, you're definitely one of those people that I miss getting to be on the mat with on those rare occasions that we did. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. I always, when I first started, you know, those first few years, Master Ryan, I believe you were still a master, but you were a younger master, and I could still partner up with you, and always fun working with you. I mean, I think we both kind of have the same mindset. Like, we want to try this stuff out and see if it works. We don't want to just go through the motions. And so, yeah, it's been, I mean, I can say this about quite a few people in the organization, but since this is your show, I mean, I got to tell you, it's been pretty neat watching your evolution, especially, you know, watching I saw you do the Do 16 years, or probably 15 years ago. I saw you win a world championship medal in China a couple of weeks ago. So that was pretty neat to see. One thing I was wondering about, I heard this thing. This is like got nothing to do with martial arts really, but I remember some years ago I saw a picture of your backyard, and if people don't know, you got like this swimming pool with like, I think, a hot tub and a water slide, and it's built into this like stone mountain looking thing. And I was like, dang, man, martial kung fu business must be pretty good. And then I heard you were on a home improvement show. Was that true? Or
so, yeah, I'll make this brief, but so it's a pretty cool story. I don't play the lotto. I don't play like bingo. I don't do contests. That's just not me. I'm not saying that's bad. That's just not me. So sometimes I guess, as a family, we just in background noise, we listen to some AM radio. And on Sundays, there was a show, I think it's still on here in Houston, 700 AM, called I think it's called the Garden Line or something. But basically, it's a backyard. The guy's like a green thumb,
Okay.
and he just helps people with landscape and stuff like that. Well, anyway, he teamed up with a company that's still around, Richard's Total Backyard Solution. He's up on Highway 6 here in Houston area. And they teamed up and they did a promotion, basically. So you take a picture of your backyard and then you write an essay about why you deserve that backyard.
Okay.
And once we got into the upper tiers, I knew the statistics. So, but here's the thing. This is one of the reasons I entered. I'm a business guy too, right? I'm not like a pre-calculus, calculus, high level, but I know business math, right? So I was like, wait a minute, it's a local contest. They're promoting it on AM radio, on a garden show. Like, how many people are really going to enter this contest,
The
right?
odds are in your favor.
Yeah. So, like, my logic, statistic business brain is starting to work. And anyway, so I'm like, you know what? And then we found out later only about, I think it was like 813, 820 people entered the contest. So, for a big makeover, that's not bad numbers, right? So the way it worked out real quick was the actual Richards, their committee, the wife, the owner, some of their staff and management went through all these emails, all these pictures, and they got to the top 5. Well, I was part of the top 5. Okay. And so the way you went from 5 to 1 was, I think it was on either the Garden Line or the Total Backyard Solution website, either one. But then after that, our pictures and maybe our resume, it wasn't the whole report, but just kind of a summary of what we wrote. And you had to vote. So I literally, and we talk about focus and commitment I think at the time, no, I had my corporate job back then, but so it was all online voting. So I was like, you know what? I think I took like a day or two off from work, actually. Maybe it felt like that. Maybe I took the day off. I forget. But I was like, okay, I got like 1 week to focus on this. And so I literally, I called Sifu. I called my old friends in New York. I called my family because it was like any online voting. You go on and you vote online. And, and actually I have to get kudos to, there was obviously our organization. And then I was, at the time, I was subleasing from a karate school. And then there was also an Aikido master that actually had access to a really big Aikido organization. And so between Sifu and the Aikido Association and some of the Karate Association, they just said, hey, this awesome guy, Brad, he's in the top 5. Let's support him. He's a fellow martial artist. It took about 15 seconds to go online and vote. And and I was with Grandmaster Ming at dinner in San Francisco at a Kung Fu seminar. This was back in probably 2002. I think it was 2002. And I got the phone call saying I won. And I thought it was a prank because I was like, okay, someone's pulling my leg and this. No, it's true. And I was like, oh my God. And then, so long story short, then I was on the Kung Fu trip. And then we got back like Sunday, I think Tuesday morning or Monday, like the newspaper was out there, the TV cameras were out there, they started breaking ground right then and there. Like that Monday or that Tuesday, they got the little Bobcat, knocked down our fence, went through the Bobcat, and just boom, started the process. And and I'll just conclude here. I know we're short on time. So at that time in 2002, it was valued around $60,000.
What?
Okay, so that was back then. I talked to a pool guy maybe 4 years ago, and just told him, what we want and etc. He said that nowadays would probably be about 100. Well, this was about 4 years ago. So who even knows what it is now?
Yeah.
But 4 years ago, he told me that's at least $120,000.
Wow.
Nice.
Double the value.
So my take,
literally and
Probably-
metaphorically, martial arts, kung fu brings good things to your life.
Yeah, very good.
So,
it's good to have some kung fu family. Absolutely.
pool party at Master Ryan's this Saturday. Address
Let's do it.
forthcoming. Before we let you go, anything else you want to mention or plug or promote? Any special events, or you just want to let people know your socials, or just give people an open invitation?
I guess that, I'm in Katy, Texas. Katy, Texas is 25 miles west of Houston. Pretty much everybody knows where Houston is. My socials, the @ symbol, I'm old school, but it's my Instagram is martial arts 4, the number, I think it's Katy, martial arts 4 Katy. Or if you just put in, Master Brad Ryan or Ming's Martial Arts of Katy, usually it pulls it up. And our website is the same, martialarts4katy.com. And that's it. I mean, we run a full-time school. We have a, excellent reputation here in Katy. And, as we grow, we are looking for, some career martial artists, right? We want to scale, we want to grow, and open up other locations, but still keep the quality, right?
Yes,
and but yeah, if anybody's interested, I've had my own long distance students, Panama, Florida, etc. So I've done the long distance student thing, not only personally, but I've also coached people as well. So yeah, if there's anybody out there that is interested in getting, a higher level of Wing Chun education, they can do background on me and the Wing Chun Museum, right? And Grandmaster Betty Ming. And I mean, we have a lot of long distance students globally, and we'd love to obviously meet those people and help those people.
All right, right on. Well, thank you for your time this evening. It was good talking to you, sir.
Okay.
And we'll get this out as soon as we can. It might take might be week or two for
no
editing
worries.
and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
But be on the lookout for it, and I'll let you know when it comes out. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Paul, Alex, Becky. Thank you for hosting this, and absolutely. And I'll share your podcast, your YouTube, and your Instagram, and do some promotion for you guys as well.
Right on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
It was so good catching up with you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Alex,
Thank you, sir.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.